Hey guys, welcome back to Bright Lights Beyond. It is our final episode of the season. Happy and sad has been something we've been talking about all season long. So, just like, you know, everything else, it's both happy and sad. Happy that we completed season 5, and also sad that you're going to have to wait until season 6 to hear us again. But we'll always live on in your memory, and also when you go back and rewatch. Listen. But you can also say rewatch now since we are on YouTube, and I do need all of you guys to become subscribers. Andy, how are you doing?
I am doing a wonderful it's bittersweet as always, like you were saying, but this was a really fun season and with a lot of fun interviews, a lot of fun formats, a lot of fun changes. So I think that was really exciting for me. So while it's sad to let it go, number one, I feel like we learned so much, not only in like our interviews with our amazing guests, but also doing a podcast on video. I'm sure you guys can tell I was like, "I need to stop looking chopped." Like, I need to start showing up and looking cute, like, Lexie's always looking cute, like, she has that unlocked, so I was like, "Oh my god, I need to, 1, look cute, 2, work on my facial expressions." Half the time I have RBF. Anyways, we could go on a whole tangent because we talk about this behind the scenes, but I'm super sad, super excited for what's in store for BLB, and happy St. Patrick's Day. That came out of left field, but, like, come on. Lexie is Irish, y'all know that. I'm married to an Irish person, so I'm low-key honorary Irish, kind of, Irish adjacent. Don't cancel me, country of Ireland, we love you. But as you can tell, we're being festive. If you're watching on YouTube, which you should be, Lexie has a beautiful green background. Green is her favorite color. And I'm gonna let you guys go to YouTube to see what I'm wearing. That's a teaser for you.
Yes, and also I wanted to introduce you to my little guy over here. His name is Denny, and I also will let you watch it on YouTube. So to know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and find us there. But yes, happy early St. Patrick's Day. Dia Ditch Kanasatatu. So hopefully everybody is having a good day and let me know how you are. So this season has been filled with a lot of love, right? Is obviously the theme of the season, but I kind of wanted to look at how love has changed us. So, obviously, we know from the past episodes that everyone's experienced love in some form. So, Andy, I have a big question for you. And like all the questions we've been asking this season, it's a little existential as always. That's kind of our realm. But who are you after you have loved? And after understanding its chemistry, its loss, and its reach beyond life, who are you after love?
It's a really good question. It's an existential one, like you said, but it's one worth exploring, right? I mean, we spent this season, like you said, Lexi, looking at love through so many lenses, through the lens of chemistry and brain chemicals, grief, the mystical, with our most recent interview with Patty. So there were so many lenses, but I feel like to kind of wrap everything up, I agree. We need to look at who you are after you have loved because that was a really common denominator throughout our interviews and our solo episodes. It's interesting. When you love someone, your brain and your nervous system build patterns around that person. It was kind of like what Dr. Sandra talked about, this almost obsession and in some way, shape, or form, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, you mold yourself around this person, right? It's not in necessarily in these big drastic ways. It can be in ordinary ways too, like how you plan your day, how you make decisions. After love changes, whether it's a breakup, whether it's distance, death, just a change in any form, the reality is that your system has to kind of recalibrate, which is why the after often feels so disorienting, even when you logically understand what has happened. So I think for any viewers or listeners who are out there, asking themselves, who am I after I experience love? I think the most helpful answer is you are in a recalibration process. How long that process takes is, up to you, but that's not necessarily who you will be forever, right? But it's almost a beauty in the changing of these cycles, right?
Yeah, I can agree totally. I think that I forget who said it. I think it might have been Patty, but once you love something, that love is never lost. It's just changed. I think as human beings, we are the embodiment of change, whether it's every day waking up and doing something new or just our bodies in general. Like we change, we age, like everything is change. And therefore, love being a byproduct of just life and living, it changes us. And I think that it's a good change, whether it's a lesson learned or forever being or just a feeling that you had once. Like, I think all those things are good and change. And so that's why I think that love has changed us, and I think that it goes for both, love that you've lost, love that you have, and love that's beyond.
That was beautiful. Like, you're so good at, like, wrapping everything up in, like, a nice little bow, which is why you're the best co-host. But I appreciate you kind of synthesizing what I kind of queued up, and I wanna go even deeper. As always, we get deep. So, can you talk a little bit, Lexi, about how love actually rewrites us, like, emotionally and chemically?
I think how love rewrites us both emotionally and chemically is that love reshapes the brain by strengthening neural pathways linked to attachment, empathy, and also reward. I feel like it triggers chemical changes, releasing, oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, the trifecta, if you will, which reinforces bonding and trust and happiness, which I will say over and over again. And over time, love can literally rewire how we respond to stress, connection, and vulnerability. So that's how I feel love can rewrite us both chemically and emotionally.
No, I think that's spot on, like, from our interview with Dr. Sandra to our interview with David to our interview with Patty, like, we really the common thread was exactly what you said. And just to expand on that, I think it's so interesting. Like, we have talked about so many amazing aspects of love, which obviously there are probably endless. But when I was researching and thinking and planning for this episode, I was considering how it's so interesting that, we are so hardwired for connection. When you connect yourself to someone in any way, it's almost like you are ultimately accepting an inevitable loss, right? Like someone breaks up, someone moves away, the friendship grows apart, like in any form, there's kind of an inevitable loss. And I don't say this to be dark in any way. I mean, if you manage to get through all the barriers of relationships and you stay together, I mean, there is the reality that like someone's gonna die first. It's not a happy reality, but with all of those kind of outcomes that, are loss and pain and, I don't wanna say suffering because again, that sounds so dramatic. To me, it is so incredible and so beautiful that amidst so much loss, we choose love again and again. Like, we choose to have this pain that we may inevitably feel be through a process that so intensely colors our lives in such a beautiful and often lasting way that I just wanted to point that out, talking about what we carry forward from those we've loved, from how we're loving now, how we will love in the future. I just think that's a really, really beautiful thing. And I think it's because we don't see love as transactional, right? It's not a gain or lose situation necessarily. I'm sure some people view love and relationships as that way, but I think, the consensus, right, is, you're in this for the experience and the perspective. So just expanding on the fact of, what we carry forward, it's information. Like you said, Lexi, it's information about how we want to be loved, how we want to show up for people, how we want to communicate, how we want to repair after conflict, and, what kind of partnerships and friendships we want to have in our lives and which ones we don't. David talked about that in our interview with him. It's kind of imprints of everyone's characters who we've loved and their shared memories that almost become a part of our own identity through that pain, through that, whatever it may be. And we've talked about so many different quotes this season, and I was, like, researching, I'm like, "What is, like, one of those quotes about love that just really sticks with you?" I hate to go back to Harry Potter because I obviously love Harry Potter, right? I made my husband watch all of it, and we just did a rewatch actually like a year ago. But it's fresh on the brain from a year ago. And there was a quote from Dumbledore that was like, "You think the dead have loved are ever truly dead or ever truly leave us, like you think that we don't recall them more clearly than ever in times of great trouble." And my interpretation of that is like everyone we've loved, their character shapes us, shapes our identity, and in the moments when we need these people most or need these lessons that they taught us, we remember them through their characteristics in the ways that we need them in that moment. Does that make sense? I feel like I just spoke a riddle.
It was giving riddle, but it did make sense. I think from what you said, there are 2 things that stood out. First, that old adage that's like, "It's better to have loved and lost than not have loved at all." And then also going off of the Dumbledore quote, it made me think of the Beatles song "Let It Be," where Paul McCartney talks about, like, how in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, like, whispering words of wisdom, "Let it be," right? I'm like, I could have sang it for you, but I didn't want to. Oh, you have to pay the exclusive. Or maybe on YouTube, it's gonna be on YouTube. But I agree, I think that in times of distress or when we really need our loved ones or we're really struggling, I think it's amazing that we can look back and think about the experiences that we've had, the love that we've had, their essence, and I feel like that is so beautiful and very true, and that just leads to the point of, like, how like matter, nothing is ever destroyed or created, right? It's just there, you know? And I believe that when you love somebody, when love is present, I mean, Patty said this that like love is the highest vibration that there is. And when Dr. Sandra was talking about it, it's it's really true because we experience love and but we don't know necessarily so much about how it all really works. We can know I remember she said, like, we can know the time, like, when it happens, but not how it happens, and we can know the how it happens, but not when it happens. So, like, there's so much involved in that. Hopefully, listener, that made sense, and hopefully you have a little board in your house, and it has a red string, and it goes boom, 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 boom. You can't see this unless you're on YouTube, but, like, I'm doing this, like, with my hands, and they're all leading to one central thing that says love.
That's the thing, like, we could literally this season, as with every season, it's like love and death and taxes. It's tax season, file your taxes, people. But you know what I'm saying? Like, love and death, it's like we could go on and on. We could have hundreds of episodes per season that are just exploring so many different aspects, so many different perspectives, so many different experiences because it goes back to what we said, I believe, in our first episode. It's like such a universal thing that we have all felt, yet we all experience love uniquely and express love uniquely.
I love that.
So, Lexi, I have a question for you. How do we live differently because of love? I feel like we've talked a lot about on this show how we live differently because of death and the awareness of death. So, how do we live differently because of love?
That's a really great question, and I feel like prioritizing presence over perfection in relationships. I feel like expressing love openly, so say it, show it, and don't wait until, it's too late. Practice forgiveness sooner and release blame. I feel like that's something that holds every one of us back, you know? I just think, release the blame, forgive sooner, make intentional choices that strengthen connection and compassion, and also live with the understanding that love is literally the point, not just a feeling, but something we actively can practice and choose.
There it is. Cut it. Cut the cameras now. Like,
Cut the cameras.
that's all you need. That's all you need. She's a love expert, guys. Like, this is what you're tuning in for. Duh. That was literally amazing as always. Like, I'm singing your praises because you're on one today in a good way. Like, you're on it. You're on fire.
I have Denny behind me and he's whispering all the
You're low-key channeling his energy. Like, his life force is like feeding into you and you're stronger because of it.
dude, I'm feeding off of Denny. And if you don't know about Denny, let me just tell you just a little bit. So he was actually raised, you know what? I'm not doing this.
Another exclusive. This is
Patreon.
on our, like, if you know where to find these stories kind of thing. Well, that was kind of our overview of, who you are after love, how love changes our lives, etc. But we've had such an amazing season that I feel like we just can't go without recapping it for you wonderful people. So, let me recap episode 1, The Chemicals of Love, the season of our theme. The theme of our season.
The season of our life. Or what was that one? The flavor of our life? Is that Folgers? Folgers coffee?
It's coming to me. It's gonna no, yeah. I'm like, no, yeah.
The flavor of our life? Okay, anyway.
Episode 1 recap The Chemicals of Love, aka our theme this season. So this was a solo episode, which is so special. We introduced obviously our theme. We framed the season as kind of an exploration of love, through brain, body, spirit. We really set the tone for what you guys were in store for. Lexi, you shared the spark for the season. All credit goes to you, but it was a documentary you watch on a flight featuring our goat, our queen, Helen Fisher, and other researchers studying love through fMRI scans and how the brain responds to images of people we love or have lost. I'm doing a lot of hand signals, so you guys are missing these if you're not watching on YouTube, by the way. So we connected our theme kind of back to the heart of BLB, obviously near death experiences. And we wanted to kind of explain why we were taking this step because on the surface it seems like such a departure, but in reality, like I said, love, death, and taxes, like it really is all combined and it's not so different from one another, although taxes are in its own category. Maybe that's next season. But, why this theme fits really naturally into the bigger questions that we explore on this show, about connection and, what continues beyond the physical, beyond this realm, beyond this life. So, love just really for both of us made perfect sense as a next step. We kind of set up the core lens for this season, love as biology and attachment, the physical and the mental/emotional side. Finally, we tapped into our STEM sides, which are small but mighty, and we talked about the key neurotransmitters and hormones often discussed in love research, like Lexi said, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, the golden triage. I just made that term up. Anyways, Lexi, do you want to get into episode 2 for us?
I would love to. First of all, the Golden Triage, that's a brunch place.
The Golden Trio, maybe? Girl, I've been watching too much of The Pit. Like, I want to get in that ER and do triage.
Ooh, she's doing
Come on,
triage.
STEM. Come on, STEM.
On STEM, small but mighty girl. Okay, so episode 2 is Your Brain on Love. And that is when we talk to Dr. Sandra Langeslag about the effects of love on our brain. Her vocabulary in the STEM field is just, simply cannot compete. And no amount of watching The Pit probably could help me. So, overall, this episode kind of shows us that love is not just an emotion, it's something that we actively regulate and experience through connection, attention, and even sometimes parasocial relationships. One of the things that stood out to me were, although there are researchers who are working on this day and night, just like Dr. Longeslag, there's actually surprisingly little we do kind of know about love because it's so hard to study the brain. Much like things like CTE, you almost have to be no longer with us for us to study it. And all we can compare to are experiments we do on animals. So it's interesting. I also find it interesting that sometimes the research that is done on love is not done in the converse, if that makes sense. Like it's only done to people in love. And so studying love outside of love can be kind of challenging. For more on this, just watch the episode. I also really liked how we touched on parasocial relationships as a form of, safe and controlled love connection, which was really interesting to me. People are using AI chatbots now to kind of have their first experiences with love, and I find that that's really interesting. I also feel like there's a question of like whether love can be regulated or managed emotionally. We can manage our temper, maybe our hunger, but can love be emotionally tempered? And then also something that stood out to me was that when we're in love, 65% of our thoughts can be distraction because we're thinking about our quote unquote beloved. So, like I said, Your Brain on Love, that episode is so interesting and so cool.
I feel like Dr. Longeslag's episode is like one I can go back and revisit like time and time again and like pick out a new piece of information every time. Like that one was just so eye-opening to me. And I really love the bridge, when she talked about the bridge experiment. Like you guys are gonna have to go back and listen for more. But it was kind of about attraction and like the physical components of attraction. And all I'm gonna say is these people on Love is Blind, get them on a bridge. Get them on a bridge for their first meetings because that show is a mess. Anyways, if you're watching, comment down below just your thoughts, I guess. I would die for Dr. Sandra's take on Love is Blind. But that was such a good episode. It was really, really, like I said, eye-opening, something I had never explored or thought about before, but I feel like I learned so much and I know I'm not alone there. So next was episode 3, Love That Outlives Loss. This was I don't wanna say fun. It was fun at times, but, it was a really, I feel like, deep interview. This one was with David Oliver, deputy wellness editor at USA Today, and that conversation really tied this season's theme directly to grief and loss, which is one of the lenses we wanna talk about love through. So, when we asked him what chemicals of love really means to him, he focused on kind of the lived experience of chemistry as an immediate sense of, warmth and rightness that can show up, either in romance or friendship, and how hard it is to kind of describe when it happens. It's like we were talking about in our intro about, the indescribable feelings of love and chemistry and connection. And I think David summed that up in that episode really well. He also shared a really personal story of how losing his own father shaped him, pushed him into reporting more and more on, the frontiers of death as it relates to wellness. And also, he talked about, how that experience changed the way he thinks about connection and meaning moving forward in his lives. And he really opened up with us. We all together talked about, there's so many conversations about death and grief in mainstream media. And I feel like this is kind of a newer trend, at least that we've been noticing. And David kind of pointed to social media as like a big factor of that. And I think we had a really interesting discussion on how that can both be validating for people who are moving through grief and when they see, other people who are experiencing the same situation or the same symptoms of grief as them. But I think it can also be a slippery slope and a nuanced topic of, then you don't want to get into comparison of, oh, I'm taking too long to move on or, oh, I'm moving on too quickly. I mean, how many times do we see people get picked apart for those kind of things? So, we don't want to be in just an echo chamber on social media, right? But I do think overall it's great that we're talking about it. David also shared a core thread of this entire season. And I think you would agree, Lexi, like the overall arching, thread was that grief, is love with nowhere to go. And it doesn't only show up after death, it can show up after life losses, ends of relationships, big identity shifts. There are a lot of different ways we can kind of experience love and grief. We also talked about how grief impacts our own relationship, including different grieving styles, how communication can also reduce the pressure to fix each other when you guys are moving through that, either individually or as a couple. And I just really love the way that we touch on humor and how that can coexist with grief and joy and all of these kind of seemingly contradictory emotions and states of being. I think that was really helpful for me, and I'm sure for listeners to know that grief is not just sadness, 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 sadness. It's humor, it's joy, it's remembering, it's happiness, tears, laughing, crying. It's all of these different things wrapped into one, which is what makes it so messy, but also so real and raw. And I think David left us with a takeaway that was really, really impactful about just embracing vulnerability, talking about our feelings, and really leaning into authenticity in our relationships, in our friendships, in our familial relationships, and how far authenticity will take us, whether in love and grief, just in life.
That is so beautifully put, and I feel like that lends itself perfectly to episode 4, where we talked about love. Me and you gave our 2 cents about love. So episode 4 is You Called, Loved, Answered, and there were some big takeaways from this episode. So this was the episode where you sent me and Andy your questions, and we answered them to best of our ability. I would like to say that some of the answers we gave were profound and should be on a pillow, but maybe the most important and profound one is that Andy said love is a choice, not just a feeling, and I completely agree with that. I also like the fact that we brought up conditional love and unconditional love. So you can look at unconditional love through the lens of conditional access in many relationships because at the end of the day, boundaries are important. I feel like another thing we learned was physical experience of heartbreak. It was interesting to learn that some researchers found that physical heartbreak can mirror similar pains of social rejection, which is very interesting. And I also think, lastly, like love is an ongoing action and a practice. So, love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, it's an action. Even when heartbreak and vulnerability are part of the risk, people choose to love time and time again over and over. And so hopefully that episode was there to, give you a lot of joy and fun and get our honest opinions about it. I'll say this. So I posted earlier today on our story about what was your favorite episode. And one of our truly loyal and proud BLBers, my cousin Allie, and her beautiful cat Holly, who I like to believe is a BLBer. I don't have evidence, solid evidence, I'll say that, but I just feel like Holly, that's my girl. She mentioned that she really liked episode for because we gave our input and we got to kind of be unfiltered with you and just talk about how we felt about love. And she said that that was really important because she liked the rapport and the answers because although we're not, a journalist technically or a medium technically or a scientist technically, big technically on that, we were able to give our own personal experiences and our thoughts on it. So I thought that that was a really cool episode. Andy, will you take us to our last episode, Love in the Liminal?
I absolutely will. This was our most recent episode, so it should be fresh on your minds if you're keeping up every 2 weeks, which you should be. If not, I will give a little recap and a little teaser of what you can expect. So, in our last interview of the season, we went big, we went bigger, we went home. We did both. We sat down with Patti Negri. She is the good witch of Hollywood to talk about what connection looks like beyond the physical, what love looks like in the next realm. So when we asked her about, what does the chemicals of love mean to you? Patty framed chemistry as the body's physical expression of something bigger, describing love as a higher frequency, vibration, the highest energetic state. And when we are in that state, the body feels it chemically while the soul experiences it energetically. I really loved how she put that. I thought it was a really fresh take in my mind. We also talked about what people usually come to Patty for in their readings, especially when they're grieving, having lost someone, looking for reassurance that love is still there. And I think Patty gave us great reassurance that it is still there. She also shared, what clients want most. It's reassurance that their loved one is okay, but there's also something that our past on loved ones want from us too. And, that's less self blame. It's less guilt about those last moments and more encouragement about viewing the relationship arc as a whole, not just saying, oh, I wasn't there at the hospital or my last call I said something rude or those things can really haunt us. I think it's understandable why, but I think Patty left us with some really encouraging words about why our loved ones that have passed on might not see, the relationship as just those last moments. So I really appreciated that. She also shared her view that love on the other side often feels clearer and less tangled in fear, ego, and time, which I thought personally was super interesting. When you take ego out of it, when you take time out of it, when you take fear out of it, it's incomprehensible to us as humans, yet love on the other side is so pure, so unburdened by these human anchors. It was just a really interesting perspective from someone who has those gifts. And she also emphasized a really practical takeaway about death and love. So she told us, say the thing now. Stop saving love for the eulogy. And I think that's something we can all hear, whether we've lost someone, will lose someone, etc. Her final message was one, again, that matched the season's through line. Love does not die, grief does not mean you're broken, and nothing real is ever lost. Much like matter, love cannot be destroyed, which is something we said in our first episode. So that interview with Patty was a really special one. Lexi, can you bring us home and summarize this episode a little bit?
I would love to. So that brings us to today's episode, After Love Changes You. So, love has the power to rewrite us both emotionally and chemically. Through the release of bonding and reward chemicals in the brain, love reshapes how we experience connection and trust and vulnerability and empathy. Over time, it can change how we respond to stress and relationships and even how we understand ourselves. This raises a deeper question. Who are you after you've loved, after you truly understand its impact? The people we love leave lasting impressions on us, shaping our perspectives, our values, our emotional lives, our Dumbledore thoughts, right? In many ways, we carry pieces of those relationships forward, recognizing that it can encourage us to live differently, to be more present, to express love more openly, to forgive sooner, and to prioritize meaningful connections we carry forward from those who've loved us because it becomes part of who we are and how we move through the world. And I feel like that in and of itself is exactly how love can change you, does change you, is changing you. Currently, right now, you're being changed by love. And hopefully, just like Patty said, the vibrations hit you. We're limited to our perspective right here on earth physically, but in the afterlife, in, near death experiences, and everything that this podcast is about, like love is so boundless and that's just something that I wanted to express to you guys and recap for you.
I mean, I think that's a perfect recap. I think it's fair to say, like, I loved doing this season, and it has changed me, for good. Interpret that as you will. But, it really has changed me for the better. I've learned so much from our guests, from each other. Like, I feel like I've learned more about your perspective on love. I feel like our listeners got to learn so much about our perspectives. I think the Q&A was so, so fun. I definitely see another Q&A in our future. It was just so fun to kind of be more conversational with you guys. I need to stop saying. That's one of my takeaways. I'm gonna stop saying, season 6 so that Lexie has a better time editing. Shout out to our editor, I can't edit, so she's really pulling her weight here. But those were some final takeaways from me. I mean, the guests were so lovely. The solo episodes were so fun. This was really and truly a fun season. I mean, every season since I've joined has been fun, but I think I get more and more confident every time. We get better at our sound, we'll get better at our video. We're already better now, like our lighting. Like it's just been such a learning process, but I've had so much fun throughout it all and have learned not only like the technical side, but like I really think we have explored the chemicals of love, which is what we set out to do. And again, I think we could go on and on and on, but I feel really satisfied and really happy.
I couldn't agree more. And this season has really taught us a lot about ourselves, about love. And it's just worth repeating that. I believe it was the episode with David. We talked about how, like, death and grief are kind of like the great equalizers, right? And fear is a big part of that as well. But the only way to combat fear, I feel like, is love. And so learning how to love and learning how love transcends this meat suit, to quote Patty, is really important. And I'm just so happy that we get to do it together and we get to do it with our listeners because at the end of the day, we've built such a community here. I mean, 5 seasons is a long time. I can't wait to see what we do in the future, what our next season theme will be, how we'll change, how the video audio will change. It's just been really fun, and we appreciate you guys simply from the deepest part of our little hearts, right? Thank you so much for tuning in and listening and being an active listener and just sharing this because this is definitely something that is for all of us. So yeah, we may be the people speaking into the microphones and editing and making the clip arts and doing this YouTube whatever, but at the end of the day, we're all learning together, and it's all about one collective love and light and spirit. So this has just been so, so fun. Do you have any other takeaways from the season, Andy dear?
None other than I think it's safe to say, like, our hearts grew 3 sizes this season. If you know, you know. But yeah, I'm feeling overwhelming sense of love and happiness and joy and celebration and excitement for the next season. Like, I'm like, girl, I want to get it going. I want to get it going.
I'm thinking I'm like and I also have had a couple of you guys express your interest of wanting to be on the podcast. So maybe next season we can do a listener's favorite episode topic type thing. So if you have any interest on being on the podcast, being a guest, if you have an expertise, I know we have some people like Tave who I've been on this podcast. Shout out to Slash Your Friends. I know my sister's always like, when can you have me on? But maybe we'll do some kind of fan meetup session. But super, super excited, so proud of us. And at the end of the day, remember to live life
Be
beyond. Salonga foil, everybody. Salonga foil.